Hello and welcome to another episode of the Safe to Feel podcast. I'm Leah and I'm really excited to talk about today's topic. And originally I wanted to talk about self-soothing techniques, but it kind of led into something else, and I'm really excited to share all this information. I find it very interesting and I hope you do too. So in today's episode, I'm going to be discussing the autonomic nervous system. And our autonomic nervous system is a network of nerves that are in charge of the unconscious process, like breathing. It controls the autonomic functions within our body that we need to survive. So basically just our defenses that are involuntary. And our autonomic defenses are basically automatic responses to perceived threats. So some of you may have heard of this before. It's called the window of tolerance. This is the parasympathetic nervous system or the ventral vagus nerve. When we're activated or functioning from our parasympathetic nervous system, we feel safe and connected. So psychologically, we feel calm and regulated. We're able to manage stressors effectively. We can tolerate stress, regulate our emotions. We can self-soothe. We're engaged and curious. We can connect with others. Physiologic responses are like our digestion is properly functioning, our immune system is good, we have regulated blood pressure and heart rate, normal breathing. And when we're functioning from this area, the window of tolerance, we're able to think and feel at the same time. But then we also have hyperarousal state, which is the sympathetic nervous system, also known as flight or fight response. So our energy increases. We have the urge to fight or flee. We experience overwhelming emotions, anger, rage, fear, panic, anxiety. Our mind is busy. We have obsessive thinking. We're distracted, or we have a difficulty concentrating. And our ability to connect and engage with others is diminished. Sociologically, our heart rate and blood pressure increases, our adrenaline secretion and flow of oxygen and blood to our vital organs increase. It can look like a decrease in proper digestion, and the production of saliva slows down, so digestion isn't great. Our breathing is increased. We could be restless, muscle tension. And you guys, a great example of this outside of trauma-related triggers, I was in the woods the other day and I heard really scary animal breathing and I thought it was a bear. And my hyperarousal state was activated, okay? Increased heart rate, the adrenaline was flowing. I was scared. I was panicked. And that flight arose, okay? It was scary. And even when I realized it was just a cow, don't even come for me. And I was safe in my car, my sympathetic nervous system was still really activated. So anyway, we will discuss more about soothing and calming, but it was crazy. But that's like an example. It can happen day to day. We can go between these different states. And then we have the hypoarousal, which is the dorsal vagus. So this is known as freeze or collapse, immobilize. This is when we experience a loss of energy, disorientation, derealization, or depersonalization, depression, numbness, loss of interest in activities and hobbies, isolation, hopelessness, shutting down. You can experience flat emotion and also a diminished capacity to engage with others, a feeling of disconnection with yourself and other people, and blank mind. A lot of people who have experienced a lot of trauma spend most of their time in either the hypo or hyper arousal states. And basically, when we experience something traumatic or overwhelming, our brain can't process what is happening in that moment, so we store it away as memories. But it doesn't always have to be traumatic either. We store memories all the time over, with the thoughts, images, emotions, body sensations. We're always storing things in our body. But triggers basically occur when an event or situation reminds the brain of a similar event that happened in the past. So a current event may trigger a memory of the past event. But the thing is, these triggers are associated with a theme. And when when triggered, that trigger will open up all of the memories associated with that theme, which can cause overwhelm. And that's what causes us to go into hypoarousal or hyperarousal states. And some examples of themes are, I'm not good enough, I'm not safe, or I have to be perfect. These are the most common core themes that we all have. So basically, in these moments, when our body feels under threat, we have our autonomic defenses, and these are wired to protect us. So there are 5 categories of autonomic defenses. And what I find really interesting is that as we grow up or as we age, our autonomic defenses become more habituated and sophisticated. So, and there are ages where these different categories, we tend to develop these defenses. So the first one is attach, which is beginning from ages 0 to 4 years old. This is the neediness, longing, waiting by the phone for someone to respond. The talk to me, the clinging energy, just this fear of being abandoned. And then we have submit. So this is from ages 5 to 8. This looks like people pleasing, trouble saying no, passive behaviors, feeling steeped in shame, complaint, feeling worthless or bad, self-criticism, self-sacrificing. It can look like excessive care taking, and submissive behaviors. Then we have freeze. So this begins from 6 to 11 years. This can look like being terrified, guarded, experiencing panic attacks, frozen, paralyzed, unable to act. Your heart's racing, but no voice. You can't speak, you freeze. And then we have flight. This begins at 11 to 13 years. So the need to escape, ambivalent, lost in fantasy, delving into addictions, eating disorders, compulsions, numbing behaviors, spacing out, foggy, checking out on our smartphones, binge watching. And then we have fight, which can begin at 12 to teen years. So this is controlling, explosive, hostile, judgmental, rigid, hypervigilant. And these were all adapted from Fisher 2009. So all of this is then connected to attachment styles. So some of you may have heard about attachment styles. I'm going to talk about the 5 attachment styles and how we develop it, or if you don't know what your attachment style is, maybe this will help you discover more about your attachment style and where it comes from. So the first one is a secure attachment, and this is seen in people with children who had a healthy attachment system from their caretakers. Then we have dismissive attachment, preoccupied attachment, and disorganized attachment. So caretakers who are punishing, violent, derisive, critical, interfering, intrusive, cold, or exhibit hostile control lead to children with deactivated attachment systems. Caretakers who are overprotective, too disclosing, emotionally enmeshed, overly involved, those caretakers who exhibit poor boundaries or anxious control lead to children with hyperactivated attachment systems. And then for disorganized attachment, it's a combination of these types of caregivers. So it can look like caretakers who are absent, unreliable, self-centered, dealing with addictions, neglectful, making and then breaking promises. Caretakers who are frightened and then frightening, intermittently non-responsive and then overreactive. They're functional and then non-functional, internally preoccupied. But, traumas don't only come from catastrophic events. They can come from repeated, disappointments, humiliations, or violations or intrusions. And relational traumas can also trigger autonomic defenses. And this is what usually plagues our adult relationships and even our daily lives. So when our attachments as children are unsafe, confusing, cold, or icky, our drive to be close with others gets wired together with our drive for safety and survival, which means intimacy can become problematic as we grow up. For example, someone desiring and the other person being cold, someone longing and the other person exhibiting flight, running away, submission and judgment. It's like we're replaying out what we were taught about closeness. And so basically when our autonomic defenses come on all at once, that's when we go into our hypo or hyperarousal states, which can impact our, daily function. And basically a lot of people who experience trauma will learn to turn away and tune out the autonomic defenses in order to function. And will basically just try not to think about it. And it works. It works until it doesn't. And so actually the issue with the turning away strategy is that it expands over time and it gets used to respond to more and more situations and can actually develop into a global phobia of feeling really anything, which I found was really interesting about this turning away strategy actually leading to social, emotional, cognitive, and physical symptoms, which just was really interesting to me. But as scary as it sounds, we actually need to learn how to turn towards our autonomic defenses and work through these memories and negative relational experiences. For example, disappointments, humiliations, that sort of thing I mentioned before. But we can learn to do this without overwhelm. Sometimes this can be done on our own. Sometimes this can be done with the help of a therapist. But really, one of the ways that has been really helpful on my journey is basically naming and getting to know your symptoms as parts of self. And that's I think I've mentioned it before about doing parts of self work. And so you I mentioned before, when I was talking about inner child, that it's not just this inner child, there's so many parts of us. Okay. And yeah, so we can learn about them, be curious about them. And basically this is known as tracking your parts. That is the work that I've been doing. And, yeah, it's super interesting. Another way is just learning how to self-soothe. And also expanding the window of tolerance. And something that was super interesting to me is when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I was working with this woman. My yoga teacher is really into somatic healing and the nervous system. And something she talked about was how yoga and meditation actually strengthens our window of tolerance, or widens our window of tolerance. And widening the window of tolerance is great because we're less likely to go into those hypo or hyper arousal states as easy. So there's a bunch of ways you can track your parts of self. I feel like for me it's easier to do it on paper or draw it, because if I keep it all in my head it gets kind of confusing. But I'm just gonna give a little example of how you can get to know your parts or parts of self, and how to track it. So you really want to tune into your body and tune into your inside experience. So any thoughts, emotions, or body sensations that are coming up, and just write down those feelings. And then you can see what the trigger was, when it happened, or when it happens, if this is a part of self that often shows up repeatedly. And then we're gonna look at how this part of you is trying to help you. So is it, doing flight, fight, freeze, submit, or attach? So then you determine which ones it's, trying to do. And remember, these are our autonomic defenses. They are trying to keep us safe. They're not bad, And then you can maybe ask yourself, how long has this part been helping you? So I usually like to look at how old I was. How old is this part of myself? So it could be, 8 years old, for example. Or how long it's been going on. Or just how old you think you are in this part of yourself. And then you can determine what helps this part calm down, even if it's just a 5% calm down. The other thing I've done is basically done my autonomic nervous system, I don't know what it's called, maybe labeling. So essentially I will think about when I'm in my window of tolerance, and then I give it a name. So for me, it's called the peaceful state. And then I have a phrase, which is I am chill. And then I say the world is blank. So for me, it's the world is calm. when I'm in my window of tolerance. Then I do the same for hyperarousal and hypoarousal. So another example, in my hyperarousal, the word is worry. The phrase is, I am unsafe and the world is chaotic. And then my hypoarousal, I call the hopeless state. My phrase is, I am alone and the world feels cold. Another thing you can do is like, I don't know what to call it. We'll call it having like a meeting with your parts of self. I actually just recently did this in therapy with my awesome therapist, because there was a part of myself that was showing up who did not want to be in therapy, which was a younger version of myself. And then it was clashing with this other part of myself that is very critical and has very high expectations. It was just really rough. So we were like, you know what, let's do a meeting. Let's get things in order. Well, I don't know if it's getting things in order, but, just getting on the same page and really figuring out, what are these parts of myself. And the work is so cool. Like, I love doing parts of self-work. I don't know. I realize so much. I'm trying not to get like too personal, so my apologies. But anyway, basically you can do a meeting. And again, you don't necessarily need a therapist to do any of this work either. So for example, and I do this outside of my sessions as well. So you can do a daily practice or weekly or monthly, but basically you can just sit quietly somewhere where you're safe and you're not going to be disturbed, and you're going to want to welcome all of your parts who wish to come to a meeting place. For me personally, my meeting place is the beach. And I like to do this on paper because I just like to visually and physically see things and write everything down to organize, but you can do it in your mind's eye too. So you just invite your parts of self and then you see who comes. I'm pretty much know most of myself, so you just want to tune into yourself and the first person at my meeting the other day was this really, what did I call them? Hold on. I called them strict. The strict part of me was the first one who wanted to come. But I had a part of me who was probably around 14 show up, 17. I had some of them are not always ages. I just named them as whatever. You want to make sure that though the person who is facilitating this meeting is your wisest self. And some people might refer to this as your highest self. You can say that. I call it your wisest self. So yeah, if, I don't know, some examples, maybe you can ask what do you want me to know? What are your worries? What's on your mind? What are your fears? Or just connecting to these parts of yourself. It's sort of similar if you watched my episode about the mother wound. I talk about inner child work. Very similar to that, just different versions and ages of yourself. Anyway, I hope you all thought this was helpful or interesting or just something new. My next episode, I would love to talk about tools for self-soothing and different ways to expand the window of tolerance. And my references for all of this amazing knowledge and information that I have is my beloved therapist, Julie Martin, with an LPC, and then Colleen West with an LMFT, and Rachel Walker with an LMFT. Anyway, thank you for joining me here today. Until next time.